So for this evening's talk, okay, yeah, I will do this. It's every now and again someone sends a letter. This one was just waiting for me when I came in. It's Friday. I think they sent it into town, and Cherry just gave it to me from somebody in North Carolina. And they said to me, "Dear Ajahn Brahm, thank you for your teachings. I'm a social worker, and I've been dealing with emotional exhaustion. At least that is what Western psychologists say, emotional exhaustion. Any Buddhist insight to how to deal with the weariness and tiredness that is coming about as my stress load from attachments to outcomes for people I support increases? How can I let go of my attachments and stress while still doing my job and maintaining empathy? What should my focus be in my practice to help myself be more skillful in relating to stress and despair?" There's a fellow called Luke from North Carolina. Just came just today, just opened it this afternoon. So it's a very nice question. So I'm going to base a talk on that. Because there are some people who are social workers, and that's just about everybody. Some are just official social workers. Questions coming already. Goodness gracious. Something I should know? Or okay, can't do too many at the moment. I'll do this at the question time. Okay, well maybe I'll join these ones in. Another one from USA, one from Georgia. How should I deal with someone who is dishonest and tries to maintain a relationship with me because they have a secret motive to get an immigration benefit? How important is physical activity such as yoga or workout for well-being of the mind from the perspective of Buddhism? Well, we'll see if this come up or not, I'm not sure. But anyway, just a major topic of being a social worker. We all have our social ties. It could be our family, it could be our friends, it could be our monks, which I'm supposed to look after. And all the people you meet in your life, especially those who are very close to you and dear to you, they're like, your people you care for. And have you ever noticed just how tiring it can be? And how it's so tiring that sometimes you just get exhausted, and that exhaustion becomes like stress. And that stress, you wonder, what am I doing this for? You become one of the other sort of patients, clients, rather than helpers. And there's so many things we should always learn when we try and help other people. And the first thing to learn when you're helping other people, when you have empathy for others, is again just to learn that it's not just about others. Okay, this is an old story, but I like telling stories. And I haven't told this one for a long time, about the 7 monks meditating in a cave. Okay, here we go. Because when you have stories, actually these are the ones you remember. And when you remember them, then you can actually put them into practice, and you realize just how important some of these stories are. The 7 monks meditating in a cave a long time ago. In a cave in the jungles, these monks were meditating, and even though there was a head monk, but they were all just like friends together, no sort of hierarchies, meditating on loving kindness. This beautiful idea, may all beings be happy and well, and your job to care for everybody, it doesn't matter who they are. And anyway, just as we were meditating on loving kindness, I should mention that the monks in this cave, this gives away the story because it's in one of my books, I think. The monks in the cave was the head monk, and the second monk was his best friend. The third monk was his brother, same blood, they also ordained. And the fourth monk was the only word you can use is like enemy. They just had a personality conflict. They weren't evil people, but you know that sometimes that people, even in the same family, friends and offices, they tend to rub up against each other. You don't know why. So they called him the enemy, always having difficulties together. And the fifth monk was a very old monk, so old in years that he could die any day now. It's a shame with elderly people, you don't know when they're going to go, and sometimes they go before you expect, and sometimes it takes many years before they go. But he was so old it could be any day when he died. And the next monk was a very ill monk. He always had one illness, one sickness after another. And again, they never knew who was going to die first, the old monk or the sick monk. And the last monk, number 7, was what we call the useless monk. Oh, how uncharitable. I mean, this is a more loving-kindness meditation, the useless monks. Some monks are hopeless. They really try their best. But, sometimes they chant out of key. So, sometimes they can't keep their robes on properly. Oops. Sometimes every time they meditate, they fall asleep. But anyway, he was not very helpful, never skilled at doing much in life, but nevertheless, and he was a monk there. And anyway, this band of robbers, these thieves, these bad guys found that cave, and what a wonderful find it was. Like a very secluded cave, there's water in there, it was secluded. It was a great place for a band of bad guys to set up their headquarters. So whenever they went into the towns or the villages to rob and steal, they could go back there and hide from the police. The police would never find them. And number 2 is that they could store all their bad goods in there, all the stolen goods, until the heat went down. There's only one problem with the cave. The monks had found it first. So, obvious solution. To kill all the monks, exterminate them, delete them, as we'd say these days if you own a computer. I must admit that, honestly, the delete button is always my favorite button on that computer. Delete this email, that appointment, that committee meeting, which I didn't go to last week. But anyway, I couldn't go, I was giving a talk. But anyway, so that was the useless monk. And these what did I get to that one for? Anyway, the bad guys, the thieves, the bandits, they wanted to kill all those monks. Now, it was the head monk. So I don't know what it is about head monks. They usually got a very, very good gift of speaking. So he managed to convince these bad guys into letting most of the monks go. Why do you want to kill us all? Because you'll tell the police where the cave is located. They said, no, we won't. Yes, you will. They came to a deal. And the deal was that the thieves could not let all the monks go. One of them would have to be killed in front of all the rest as a warning. And their warning was that if any of the monks who they let go told the police, the authorities, where this cave was located, they would come for them and they would kill them too. Just showing them they were serious. And that was the best deal the head monk could get. One of the monks had to be sacrificed so the rest could go free. Well, at least 6 monks would be able to live. But the point was, it was the head monk's choice. Who would die so the rest could live? A terrible choice to make. And I'm going to ask you now, if you haven't heard this story before, some of you have, so please be quiet. If you were that head monk, or head nun if there was nuns in there, and you had to make that decision, who would die so the rest could live? Who would you choose? Now remember, I'll tell the monks now, or 7 of them, there was the head monk who was going to make the decision. There was his brother. If it's a real brother, you do anything for your brother. Your mates, you got your best friend, it's the same, almost like a brother in life. Mates will do anything for one another. And the enemy. Never liked him anyway. The next monk was a very old monk. The old monk was going to die any day, just maybe a couple of days earlier than expected. Same with the sick monk. No one knew who was going to die first, and just shortening life a little bit so everyone else could have many more years to meditate and live. And lastly, there was a useless monk who'd his whole life had never done any really good service for anybody. Maybe that was his opportunity. So if you were the head monk, who would you choose? If you heard it before, be quiet because it spoils it for everybody. Who would you choose? Oh, you have all heard it before? Oh, okay. Well, I know whenever I tell this, and I realize people haven't heard it before, they always say that he sacrificed himself. He said he chose himself. And one of the best times I told that story was in a place called Sacramento in California years ago. It was in front of a bishop, as Anglican church bishop. And it was wonderful. His hand went up straight away, and he said, of course he sacrificed himself. And that's what, Christians often do. And I said, that's the wrong answer. I must admit, I enjoyed that. I shouldn't have done so much enjoyed that. But afterwards, he sort of thanked me for this and said, can I use it in my service? I said, of course you can. It was wonderful little teaching. And he said, no, he never sacrificed himself. Then who did he sacrifice? And of course the answer was, he couldn't choose. He was actually incapable of choosing, because his love towards his brother was no more, no less, absolutely equal to the love towards his best friend, even his enemy. He loved the old monk and the sick monk as well as all the other monks equally. And even the useless monk, he loved the useless monk as well. No more, no less than everybody else. And most importantly, he loved himself. No more, no less than every other monk. He said he couldn't choose. And that's one of the reasons why I mentioned the fact I told this story to I think Episcopalian, bishop in California. And I said, didn't your teacher teach you that as well? To love your neighbor as yourself? Never said to love yourself more than your neighbor. Never said to love your neighbor more than yourself. Which means equal, absolutely equal, not more, not less. To love your neighbor as yourself, to love yourself as your neighbor. And he got it straight away. He said, yeah, great. And of course that answers a lot of questions about why anyone in social service, anyone in the caring profession, anyone who's a teacher, who's a monk, a nun, a president of a Buddhist society in West Australia, a mother or father or son or whatever, anybody. It's not just about caring for others, is it? Because then you leave one person out. You. It's all of us. We care for each other, all of us, equally, no more, no less than all others. And before someone asked me this in the question time, well, what happened at the end when the monk said he couldn't choose? And this was, again, I mentioned, loosely based on a sutta in the Theravada of Talaputta Thera. It's not quite the same as I say, but there's many similarities there. And what happened was half of those bandits, those thieves, those bad guys, half of them went back to the village and got proper jobs, and the other half became monks. What did you used to do before you became No, he was an electrical engineer. It was pretty boring, but never mind. But there's something about that sort of ending the story. Some of these truths actually do inspire you, and they do change your life. But anyway, it's learning as a social worker that you count too. And so a lot of times, a little question like this, why is it that, how can I just not get so stressed out when I'm trying to help others, and that's my job, and I really care about the people I look after. And of course the answer is that you should put yourself in the equation as well. You count as well. And just to emphasize that, another little anecdote which I've used very often, and I first started using this anecdote, or this little analogy, at weddings. You know, for all those of you who have relationships, and many of you know this, that at the end of the service, I can't to perform marriages, it's against our precepts, but I always give the blessings at the end of a marriage. I'm very happy. I've given those blessings for gay and lesbian marriages. I'm quite proud of that, just give my support wherever I can. But anyway, I remember this marriage, it's a boy and girl marriage, which I was giving some advice afterwards. And I always recall with great glee confusing people. There's something sort of like, almost like, I wouldn't call it malicious, but naughty or cheeky in my character. And that was looking at the newly married wife. Just been married maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And if you ever seen a bride, you know, look into her eyes and she's just married, she's all gooey inside. Happy but gooey, ah. And then I ask her, I tell her, I said, now you're a married woman. From now on you must not think of yourself. She goes, oh yes, 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 and looks at her husband. And I said, and also, now you're married, you must not think of him either. And turn to the guy, tell him the same, you're a married man now, you must not think of yourself. And for the rest of your life together, you must not think of your wife. If you haven't heard this before, it's a powerful teaching. Because all of you who've had a relationship, and you know the person you're living with is just thinking of themselves, it's selfish, that's a terrible relationship to be in. And you just give, they just take, and then you get burnt out after a while. Just living in social service and not just about giving. It's not about taking. So it's not about just thinking of your partner from now on. It's not just thinking of yourself. There's this beautiful third option, which people miss in a marriage. That's now you're married man, married woman. You must never think of yourself. You must never think of your partner. From now on, you must only think of us. Just, US, us, together. And they get it straight away. Ah, yeah. You're in this life together. Doesn't matter, who's the boss and who's the worker. Doesn't matter. This weekend I'm the senior monk here, and Venerable Radha is supposed to be looking after me. I often joke that I usually end up looking after my attendants. It's true, isn't it? But anyhow, it's not about me looking after someone else or someone else looking after me. We look after one another. We look after us. Even our Buddhist Society of Western Australia. Yeah, I'm the spiritual director. And even so, sometimes people call me spiritual dictator. Jin is our president. And we've got a few other committee members around here somewhere, Buddhists in the back there somewhere. But it's all about us. The only way we can actually survive is actually working together and just have that perception. It's not what I need, it's not what I can give. It's just what we need, what we can give. It's something, a third option, and that's very powerful. And it's wonderful if we could possibly do that in just places like social services or in hospitals. It's not about the doctors being superior than the patients. We're in this together. It's a few people who have illnesses. Some people have got some knowledge, but even the doctors, you feel that illness. You have empathy. We're in this together. How can we do something to make this less of a problem. And in social services, one of the biggest problems there, and I mentioned this before, it's because people always try to cure the problem. It's a big mistake. COVID, trying to find the solution, cure it. Injections and lockdowns. Oh, I was so unlucky recently. I just run out of my good karma, I reckon, because I was supposed to go to Melbourne last Friday. Really, I had my ticket to go to Melbourne and to give some talks for their Wesak celebrations over there and visit the monastery. And of course, you know what happened. A couple of days before my flight, there's the COVID cases there, lockdowns, and I couldn't fly. I had to cancel my ticket. And I said, well, but if I'd have got into Melbourne, then I would have to go into quarantine. Yeah, that's a monk's dream, quarantine. 2 weeks where I could be left alone, you couldn't contact me. Just relax and meditate and sometimes apparently you have hotels where you go into quarantine. We don't have those things in monasteries like hotels. You can have beautiful showers, maybe take a bath. But I didn't get that. So close. Another couple of days and I'd be in quarantine. Oh well, never mind. But one of the problems with life is, again, we always try and make people better, make the situation better. He's talking here about outcomes. What are the best outcomes? Is it really just having a healthy community with people having no problems, physical problems or emotional problems? This is not Disney. This is not the movies. This is real life. There will always be problems and difficulties and sickness. But how can we take those problems and transform them into something which is amazing? One of those little areas, somebody asked me, I think in the question time in some of the time, I still had to give all the talks on Zoom from Bodhinyana Monastery, so I didn't get away with not working, even though I couldn't go to Melbourne. But somebody asked a question about what's Ajahn Brahm's take on things like schizophrenia. And that's something, that's a very difficult thing to deal with. And what are we going to do about that in our world? Put all the people with schizophrenia in a hospital and lock them away and pretend they don't exist? It's not very nice, is it? It doesn't feel good, and of course it's not good. So, but then they can sometimes cause a lot of angst to people. So what is the solution? And this is just one sort of problem which we have. And the solution is all coming from that. So I remember him again, because one of the other monks over in Bodhinyana Monastery's got some intestinal trouble, so he's going to see this gentleman again. And that was one of my disciples who's a colonoscopist. Have I got it right these days? Because some time ago I just used the coarse word bum doctor. But I don't say that. I try to avoid that. He shoves a thing up your, you know what, and takes photograph inside. But then, anyway, he's such a kind man, and he's got a reason for that. And the reason for it is he was a gentleman. His parents, are they here this evening? Parents often come here, but no, he's very busy these days with his life. But when he just grew up in this temple here, we've been here for about 38 years now, about 37 years in this location here. And so there's many kids who've actually grown up here and seen them when they're very tiny and messing around, running around. And it's one of the reasons I don't mind kids coming here and running around. It becomes like a second home to them, and they just become at ease in this place. Don't expect them to meditate at first, but at least they feel this is an important place for them. But anyway, this guy grew up and he went to school and went to university, very smart fella, and then eventually just went to medical school, became a doctor. And that was when he just came up to me one day. He was just working, I think it was in Royal Perth Hospital, and he came to see me at lunchtime on a Saturday, and then just said, "Look, Ajahn Brahm," I knew this, it was so small, it was almost like I was like a godfather to him. And he said to me that, like, I can't do this job anymore, I've got to resign. And that was actually quite shocked me, because all that hard work for many years, he was just going to throw it all away. And of course I asked him what had happened, and the story was that one of his patients had died. But it was a tragedy of the death, which, he was empathetic. He just, saw what had happened, and it really hurt him very much. He was a young man. He said his patient was about 22, 23-year-old girl, and, he didn't know why she died at first. It was one of those cases where he didn't actually see what the problem was. They found out the problem at the autopsy, but then it was obviously something he couldn't do. Doctors just couldn't see that. I don't know exactly what, but he felt so guilty. You had this woman in your care, and she died. And he was the one who had to go and tell her husband that his wife had died. Just surprised. It's not surprised, that's understatement, shocked him. And to tell him that his two baby children had no mother. And he said, I was like twisting the knife in his guts. And he said that he couldn't do that anymore, he couldn't take it. He said he just came to me and said, I got to resign. I can't face that anymore. You can imagine that, you have empathy here, just what would that feel like? There's a family, you've been talking to them, your mum's sick but she should be okay, and then you go and tell them she's dead. That really hurts. So he said, I've got to find another job. But of course I told him, I said, no, you've misunderstood the purpose of being a doctor. Just like people who are in any caring profession, like social workers, what's the purpose, what's the point of what you're doing? Because once you understand purpose and what you're doing, then you understand what the outcomes are. And I said, your job as a doctor is never to cure people. That's not your main purpose. Your main purpose is to care for people. Just change one letter from cure to care. And then you find that you'll always be successful. Or you always can be successful. You can always care for people. Can you always cure them? Of course not. The nature of this body is to get sick and to die. We try and care for them on this path. And I said, when you're caring for the patients and their relations and their friends, then the whole treatment is totally different. It's not trying to keep them alive, sometimes at all costs. Even though it really hurts and it harms people, it's caring for people. And then I also told him that you never need to feel a failure from now on. And number two, you probably cure more people than if you try to cure them, make caring the priority. And of course he got it straight away, and he's a very successful doctor, specialist. And good on him for understanding that point, to care, not to cure. So as a social worker, don't put your job as a social worker to cure people and find the problems and solve the problems, but use caring instead. That way you can always be successful. And people with schizophrenia, are you going to cure that? Honestly, you may not be able to, I'm not sure. But you can always care for someone who's in that situation. And say caring for them will actually change just the whole process of what we're doing. Making care more important than cure, because caring, kindness, compassion is so powerful. I've always found that, and You all know that. That's one of the reasons you come here. You recognize that just the power of compassion and kindness is huge. And sometimes we think that no, we're supposed to be curing people instead. How about just letting them be? And a few times that I do read articles about people in mental health. I think it was in Sweden, I think this was doing many years ago. They say people who had these illusions through quite chronic and schizophrenia, that sometimes they described it as sometimes they would see like human heads rolling in front of them. It was just, obviously it could not be the case, it was irrational, illogical, but that's what they were experiencing. And some of these doctors were affirming what they were seeing. Not saying that, this was their perception, I can't see it, but it's your perception. I'm going to give that some dignity and affirmation. And just a case that they were being kind, receiving kindness, then those symptoms decrease significantly. Now, it doesn't matter, you may be seeing crazy things, but if somebody and all these people in power and authority, they say you're stupid, you can't see it properly, it's wrong, that makes you more stressed, that makes you more negative, that makes you more sort of on the edge. And I can understand how that would increase those power of those delusions. But a little bit of kindness, oh, that's a head rolling by, okay. And that sort of affirmation will lessen the problem. A little bit of kindness and care. That's all it was taking. And not only that, the human being. I've said this so many times, I've had experience of visiting people with things like schizophrenia. And I'm not going to say all the other things now because it's OCDC? No, it's ACDC. Stupid action bomb, too many acronyms. But anyway, just all of these times, why is it that people love labeling? You are sort of crazy, you are mad, you are this, you are that. And in my experience, people aren't like that all the time. They're sometimes stupid, they're sometimes argumentative, they're sometimes beautiful people. And this was a weird thing, to see that people who were supposed to be crazy, mad, people who are supposed to be violent in jails, people who are supposed to have or be autistic, people who are... See all these people, they're not always like, the symptoms. It's like they have diseases, but they're not always there in that sort of, that intensity. In other words, there were people before they were schizophrenic. Even people in jail, they were human beings before they were criminals. And you could see so many beautiful parts of their nature. And so a little of that degree of kindness and caring for a human being. Even people who are sick and dying in hospital, they're not sick or dying, they're people who have sicknesses. People who are dying. And of course I still remember that case of the nun. She was dying. And she was really sick. And she was the only person who she would let in to her room during her dying process. And I always want to know why. Why me? She said, because you don't talk to my sickness, you talk to me. You don't talk to the crime when you go into a jail. You talk to the person. You don't talk to the schizophrenia, you talk to the other part of the person, which isn't schizophrenic. And that's there. And that's like a caring for the whole being, instead of trying to cure part of them. And little by little, you find that that works. It's a much more respectful to that person than always trying to cure them. And I don't know what the in the emotional exhaustion is a lot of time is trying to do something which you cannot do. And there's an alternative there. When you're caring for the person, you're also hopefully understanding you're caring for yourself as well. It's a team. You're involved. It's all about us, not about him, her, or me. And that's one of the reasons, it's working, it's us, you're actually caring. When you actually enjoy and have a great deal of fun when you're a social worker, when you're a doctor, when you're a nurse. That degree of fun and joy means that you're caring for yourself as well as you're caring for the patients. And that's one of the reasons why that when you realize you're in it together, sometimes you don't know really who is the patient and who is the doctor, who is the carer and who is the one being cared for. Have you ever had that when you do any sort of social work and you're in a group of people and who's a patient, who's a doctor? The roles get sometimes reversed. You all learn, you all grow, you all heal. Not just the one person you are focusing on. Every time when I did, as a layperson, did social work, one of the things which I volunteered for, as you all know, was helping people with Down syndrome. And I thought I was being a goody-goody, just helping. I was healthy, not very smart, I must admit, those days, but healthy and had some time. Let's go and help the poor disadvantaged. But I was the one who was disadvantaged. Honestly, that the people I met there, they taught me so much. They taught me emotions. I was supposed to be caring for them, but in the end they ended up caring for me. I learned so much. Now remember that time that I was a student at university, a big university, and I thought how superior I was. And I spent one afternoon a week in occupational therapy for Down syndrome, no training at all, but they taught me just how to feel. They're my emotional lecturers, if you like. So anyway, when you learn just how, if you are doing social service, you are also a client as well as a provider. You're in it as well, so you count as well. And so how to do this is this little byproduct, this little sayings which really help you. And one of those sayings was from Ajahn Chah, who was just looking after so many monks, and many of them Westerners, and many of them people who couldn't understand a word he was saying. But he was very good at caring. But he would use things so simply. Anyone in social work, anybody who's a parent, anybody who listens to other people's troubles, he always would say, you have to be like a waste bin, a rubbish basket. You have to sit there, and I do this a lot. I sit here and you come and tell me all your problems and all your difficulties. And things, I don't know why you told me about your marriage problems, but I have not been married. What do I know? Troubles with your kids? I haven't had kids. What would I know? Of your work? Well, I do work, but not your type of work. About money? I don't have any money. What would I know? But he said one of the jobs you have to do as a monk is just sit here and listen to people. You ever know that you don't have to give answers. You don't have to find solutions. That's curing. You listen and you care. That's all you do. So sometimes people say, oh, it was really helpful. Thank you for talking to me. So what did I do? I didn't give you this magic bullet so you could actually solve the problems in your life. But I sat here and listened and cared for you. But if you do any of that sort of stuff, that afterwards so many people think, oh, what should I have done? Maybe I can do this, maybe I can do something else. And you start thinking about it afterwards. And that is one of the problems with social work, with caring for others. You forget you should also be caring for yourself as well. You count too. So how do I do that, and how did Ajahn Chah teach me to do that? He said you have to be a waste bin as a monk. Sit here and listen to people. But then you always must remember to be a waste basket with a hole in the bottom. So when I get up and go back to my room, I don't take anything back to my room with me. It all stays here. Be a waste bin with a hole in the bucket. Hole in the bottom, sorry. So what that means is you're always empty. You always got some more space for the next person who comes up. Oh yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but oh yeah. That's terrible, that's really good. Maybe try this, maybe try that. And afterwards, I don't take anything back with me. That's important. Because one of the reasons why people just get so tired and exhausted in life is they tend to keep other people's problems. Haven't you got enough problems for yourself? Of course you have. So what do you want more problems for? But there's something about, we think we're being irresponsible if we don't think and try and find a solution to the problems in our life. We want outcomes, measurements. I hate that word measurements, because that causes so much problems. We measure people. This one's healthy, this one's sick, this one's smart, this one's dumb, this one is old, this one is young. And that puts people in so many boxes. And measuring people, can't we stop that for a little while? So a person's in front of you. Is that schizophrenia? Is that ACDC again? ADHD. Was that a band? But instead of measuring the people, the person you live with, do you really know them? Can you measure them? Are they a good person, bad person? Don't they surprise you sometimes? Oh, wow, where did that one come from? So that's what. Do you know yourself? How on earth can you measure other people? Can you really measure yourself? Are you a good person or a bad person? What are you? So sometimes you're really great, sometimes you're stupid. At least I know that. You maybe say most days I'm stupid, Ajahn Paul, but every now and again it's a really wise thing which comes out. Maybe, I hope. Anyway, you come here to listen to it, so... But after a while, just when we make caring more important than curing, we're in it together, it's all about us. It's not me teaching you, it's you teach me a lot as well. We're in it together. And little by little, then you don't get so tired. I'm in it too, so when it's me a time, I just go back and take a rest. And in the evening, when I go back and take a rest or meditate, you all disappear. And all the problems and difficulties of life, they vanish too. So I'm not there all the time. I'm an empty bucket. How can you actually do that? Because I also notice that when you can let go, that's what I mean by having a hole in the bottom, let go of all the kindness and giving you've just done. You let go. It's so easy to be at peace. Human beings, we just tend to cling and get stuck to things of the past. Imagining that will help us. It doesn't, it burdens you. You let it go. Be free. Because that's where you re-energize. That's one of the things which I've seen in my life for so many years now. I can get tired and talking to people a lot and really trying to care as much as I can, and then but I'm very easy to re-energize, and it's so simple to do. You just sit and let go of the past and be here and care for this moment by yourself. Spend a lot of time as a monk in solitude. After this talk is finished, when I go back to my room even, I close the door, meditate alone for a while. And in that solitude, there's amazing things happen. Your mind charges up. Just use a simple simile, your mobile phones. If the mobile phones are in constant use, of course they get worn out. But if you can just charge up your phone and not use it for a while, of course it gets bright and re-energized again. And that's just like the mind. So often they just get very exhausted and just find a nice quiet place and just sit down and stop. Be very peaceful. I don't try and cure my tiredness. I just care for this body and mind. Leave it alone. Be kind to it, and it becomes really well charged up. I don't know if the monks have noticed this. I think I've been trying to tell them that sometimes if I've had a really quiet meditation, really still, I'm just full of beans afterwards, full of energy, telling stupid jokes and stuff. And then I get tired, and I go off to my room and meditate and come out telling some more stupid jokes. You get energy and positivity. This is actually how the Buddha taught. He said that if a person develops nice quietness, you rest, energize, and you get clarity of mind. And that clarity of mind means that you can actually find solutions to amazing problems. Often quoted, the partner's not here this evening, but this lady who was one of the head social workers in Perth many years ago. And for those of you who remember her, Wani Nut interaction, yeah, remember her? I remember when she came on one of the retreats once, late at night she came. She's only living in just round the corner in Perth. We used to have these retreats in the North Perth Redemptorist Centre. But anyway, she came really late because she had to tie up her loose ends, and then because her job was a terrible job to have, but she did it so well. She was the one who had to sign off on which kids would be taken away from their mothers, because their mothers were just drunk or drug addicts or just totally incapable of looking after their kids. You knew what that do to the kids, but there was just a lesser of two evils. And so she had to make that decision. That was nerve-wracking. And she told me just in the first interview, said, "Oh, so much unfinished business." But she needed to take a rest, and so she came up to the retreat. And after 4 or 5 days, she was the one who came up to me in interviews and said, "It was amazing. I wasn't thinking about all this work at all. I just dropped it for 4 or 5 days. I needed to. But then I was just meditating, and after a nice deep meditation, very peaceful, and when I came out of the meditation, all these solutions came up. Really innovative solutions. And so I went to my room, wrote them all down, and then just forgot about them because there's another couple of days left of the retreat. I said, yeah, exactly, that's what happens. When you learn how to be still, you get solutions. And for those of you who just really want to check this out, there's one guy, I remember, this, was it George? I think, no, Brian Josephson, his name was anyway. He's the only Welsh man who has a Nobel Prize in physics. He was at Cambridge. That's pretty much a big achievement, a Nobel Prize in physics. And it was in supercomputing, basically quantum tunneling. And he saw that. He had to argue his case for years before the proof came out, and he got his Nobel. But he got that insight meditating. After meditating, coming out, it was doing the old transcendental meditation of old. And that's where he got the deep insight to get a Nobel Prize. That's pretty impressive. So this is actually where we find solutions, not by thinking about them, by training our mind to be so peaceful and powerful. And that's what the Buddha said in the Nalakapana Sutta, that when you develop deep meditation, your hindrances to seeing things clearly just disappear. Not only that, but your weariness and tiredness also disappear. And this is one of the questions here, you get tired in today's workforce. You're exhausted, you're just surviving. And all the work which is asked of you, how can you cope? That's how you cope. Because half an hour meditation, when you come out afterwards, you're full of energy, you're bright, sparkling. Where does that come from? The nature of your mind. You rest and you become empowered. And I don't know why more people don't do that. I did that when I was at university. That's how I passed my exams in the afternoon. Half an hour just meditating between one exam and another. And just after the first 3-hour exam on astrophysics of the galaxy or something. That's pretty tough. And so afterwards, you meditated and it's incredible to actually observe. And afterwards, you're just full of energy. Your mind was clear and precise. You could answer the questions easily. You had all the training in there before you went to all the lectures, but now you had to use your brain. And the brain was exhausted, and now you can really give it lots of power. So that is actually how we can live in our modern world and energize our mind and actually just see deeper without any stress. Stress kills us. And it just takes away a lot of happiness in life. And when we have stress, how on earth can you be a really kind, loving partner to the people you live with? You don't have to. You can work really hard, but work wise. Be really productive. And I tell the monks, I don't know, you have to actually correct me on this one, but I keep on saying, I don't work hard. I don't. That's what I think anyway. But I get a lot done. I'm very productive. Am I? I don't know. But anyway, I suppose I've got quite a few. But you don't get stressed out. How come? When I get tired, I meditate. I know how to rest. I know how to let go. And I know how to re-energize. So if you can do that, and that's what we teach here, Saturday afternoons, meditation, online, guided meditations, Friday evening before we meditate, that's how we get our power from. It's always been that way. Not all monks and nuns are good meditators, but some just, they really teach you how you can live in the world without any stress, being highly productive, get Nobel Prizes, what do you want, have good relationships, know how to just relax, let go, serve, and to care, not to cure. What a wonderful world we can make. Okay, there we go. So that's my talk today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu. That's some of the things we actually say at the end of a talk. Sadhu means awesome. So do you want to try it again? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I don't know why people just go sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So sadhu. Okay, anyway. We've got a couple of questions here. Dear Ajahn, how should I deal with someone who is dishonest one and tries to maintain a relationship with me because they have a secret motive to get an immigration benefit? Well, that's a bit tough for me. I've never done that, so how would I know? But if someone is dishonest, with dishonesty, why are people dishonest? Because they're afraid of telling the truth. So see if you can make honesty less fearful than telling the truth. It's called amnesty. And seriously, your partner, your friends, your family, please tell them, tell your kids, tell your wife, your husband, whoever, please tell them, if you're honest to me, I will never get upset at you. I will never get angry at you. Because I respect honesty so much, that's the number one. Always amnesty, especially for your kids. Make that promise to your kids, no matter what you get up to in your life. You can tell mum or dad, be honest with us. because I'm here to help you. I will not criticize you, scold you, beat you, or throw you out of the house, because that's how much I respect honesty. And to get an immigration benefit, that's the United States, that's beyond me. But isn't it, that's another thing, which is why is it that people, if they're already in the country, why can't they sort of be allowed to stay there? If they're good people. Anyway. How important is physical activity such as yoga or workout for well-being of the mind from the perspective of Buddhism? It's helpful. I do some activity. I do 10 push-ups every morning. I do. If you don't want to know what they are, I stand in front of the mirror, put my 2 fingers on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exercise these muscles. They're really important. So the other muscles as well. So it's important, but don't overdo it, especially at my age. My therapist likes to give my insecure... My therapist likes to give my insecure thoughts a name and personality, to dissociate these thoughts from me. What does Buddhism say about separating these parts of yourself? They're not parts of yourself. You're much bigger than that. They're tiny little, things which come and visit you, but they're not yours. So look upon them as like visitors, and they come into your life, into your mind, to teach you something. And when you've learned their lesson, then they'll disappear. That's why any sort of problems I had, Ajahn Chah would call them, if it was a mosquito biting me, that's Ajahn mosquito. If it's like tiredness, it's Ajahn tiredness. Ajahn means teacher. So if it's, depression, it's Ajahn depression. It's there to teach you something. Once you learn the lesson, you never need to go back to that class again. And from Spain, dear Ajahn Brahm, what would happen if your Dharma talks get so successful that everybody in the whole universe becomes monks and nuns? Would then the human race starve and get extinct? No, we would have cyborgs. We would have robots to do all of that work. So, we'd have monks and nuns, all monks and nuns, and no one else. No politicians. No bikies. No people stopping you going at wherever you need to go in the airport. Wouldn't that be a wonderful world? No police. You can park wherever you want. But if you're monks, you would never actually break the law because you're honest. So I think it'd work wonderfully well. Nothing wrong with that. Robots, they can produce everything. Shall we try it? Okay, thank you from Spain. Of course, it will never happen. But you can always have more monks and nuns. Honestly, I know I'm a monk myself, but what a wonderful thing it would be if we had more monks and nuns in our world. Honestly, wise people just living simply, and people you could actually go to very easily and just, you don't get advice, but you get care, kindness. And people just look at you, they're not asking for anything, they're not going to be a sexual partner or a romantic partner or a boss or a slave or whatever. They're just looking at you as just a nice human being, and they just give care. That's why I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, that this economist in the UK, a professor at one university there, he worked out how much it costs to look after a monk or a nun. How much it costs. And it turned out, he knew what he was talking about. He crunched the numbers. It's cheaper to look after a monk than it is to look after a dog. So he's saying every home should have one. Just get a little kettle in the back. We call them cooties. They're very small. Been in my case. Just give them a bowl of food once a day. Take them for a walk in the morning. They never sort of bite you, or and just very nice and just a nice little companions. When he said that, I thought, wow, it's so interesting in there. We're not, but to have, those of you who are men looking for a wife, that's really expensive. Women trying to find a husband, oh, that. So you should get a monk or a nun instead. Much better. Okay. Any questions from the floor before we finish off? Okay. Okay, now let's finish off now. I'll bow 3 times to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then anyone who wants to come up and ask questions, most welcome.
Just wait for it to Just wait for it to clear. Very good. Bodhicharya